Your favorite Grey's Anatomy surgeons didn't simply go. Their lives were on the line. Years were spent in therapy in preparation for quitting. Another entered a rehab facility to battle an addiction that began with back discomfort. After her body failed due to stress, a young doctor was diagnosed with mental disorder. Every spectacular departure was the result of a desperate person who believed that the cost of success outweighed the benefits. It all began in 2004, when Shonda Rhimes decided to make a new creation. Another ordinary hospital show was not what she wanted. She wanted the women on television to feel authentic. Furthermore, she had no intention of replicating what was already in existence. For this reason, she chose Seattle as the site for her show despite being from Chicago. She wanted a new vibe, and ER was already rooted in Chicago. However, the location was only one aspect of the larger concept. It was about the individuals within it. Women who felt genuine were what Rhimes desired. Just honest, not flawless or well-groomed. Her fascination with surgery shows stemmed from the fact that surgeons could discuss breakups while cutting someone open. Therefore, she didn't consider ethnicity, gender, or even appearance when creating her characters. All she wanted for each role was the best actor. That's how a unique and diverse cast began to form. Grey's Anatomy was the name of the show, but it was almost something else. ABC gave the idea of renaming it. Complications, some serious consideration. That did not occur. However, what actually occurred altered everything. It was initially scheduled to air on Monday nights at 10 p.m. on ABC, January 2005. However, they changed it to March at the last minute. Additionally, they scheduled it for Sunday, immediately following Desperate Housewives, rather than Monday. That spot was the most popular television program at the time. Was precious. Desperate Housewives viewers simply continued to watch. As a test, Grey's Anatomy was only intended to run for 4 weeks. However, the number of viewers increased from 16.25 million to 17.71 million by the time episode 2 was shown. The audience wasn't only curious, they were captivated. ABC chose to continue instead of pursuing the 4-week plan. They had already decided on a course by May. There was no end in sight for Grey's Anatomy. After season 2, it became much more than just another medical drama. The figures were outrageous. Every week, more than 21 million people watched. Everything changed after the Super Bowl episode. 38 million viewers watched. It was among the decade's most significant TV moments. At last, ABC had discovered its crown treasure. Meredith, Derek, and Addison had the audience captivated. The hospital was not the only setting for the drama. It was all over. People never left once they were drawn in. The accolades came soon after. Grey's won the NAACP Image Awards, the Golden Globes, the Emmys, and more. Isaiah Washington, Chandra Wilson, Jesse Williams, Sandra Oh, and Katherine Heigl all brought home awards. They even acknowledged the writers and casting directors. Not only were Shonda Rhimes' writing excellent, they had a lot of impact. The show was praised by critics. The show was adored by the audience. It was a movement rather than merely a hit. Then an odd thing occurred. Words from the show began to be used in everyday situations. McSteamy and McDreamy assimilated into the culture. After Christina dubbed Meredith hers, everyone had a person. To discuss coding, scrubbing in or on-call rooms, you didn't have to be a doctor. The vocabulary used in the show permeated daily life. People began referring to real-life drama as a situation from Grey's Anatomy. TV was no longer the only thing. It was the way they spoke. Then Thursday evenings arrived. By scheduling Grey's for Thursdays at 9 p.m., ABC took a chance. NBC used to have the time slot. Grey's did more than simply survive, though. It was its property. Thursday at 9 meant one thing for 18 years in a row: Grey's Anatomy. Parents saw it. Then their children did. It became into a weekly routine. Nobody else maintained that level of consistency for so long. It truly made news when they eventually rescheduled the time period in 2024. It ran as deep as that. However, Grey's wasn't limited to television. It gained a second home on Netflix and Hulu. People who couldn't watch it in 2005 were now binge-watching 20 seasons in a month. It became the year's most streamed drama in 2024. Almost 48 billion minutes were viewed. Families gathered around a table. Mothers who have previously viewed it are now re-watching it with their daughters. Once again it was taking place, but on a separate screen. One of Grey's Anatomy's biggest stars was Isaiah Washington. However, the events that transpired behind the scenes in 2006 would alter everything. For the show, for the actors, and for him. It began one October evening. Filming was taking longer than expected. Isaiah wasn't happy when Patrick Dempsey arrived late to set. According to some, Dempsey intentionally did it to retaliate against Isaiah for his earlier tardiness. For whatever reason, Isaiah snapped. "You son of a bitch," he screamed. As he pushed Patrick up against a wall, members of the crew froze. Marty Carrillo recalled that Isaiah's eyes widened immediately after, as if he became aware that he had gone too far. Immediately the filming ceased. The worst part wasn't that everyone was told to go home. Isaiah said something that would ruin his career during the argument. The homophobic epithet at TR Knight, who wasn't even involved in the altercation, loud enough for others to hear. TR had not yet made his public debut. Not even his family knew. The word quickly got out, and it wasn't limited to TR. It compelled him to handle a very private matter in the most visible manner imaginable. The crew was in disbelief. According to TR, it was the first time he had ever been called that word directly. He went on Ellen and talked about how it made him feel uneasy. He sensed a change. He was no longer able to remain silent. In an interview with People magazine, he came out. He wanted to be in charge of his own story, even though it wasn't how he wanted to do it. It wasn't made any simpler by Isaiah. The show won a Golden Globe. A few months later, he exacerbated the scandal in the press room, rather than letting it go away. Instead of rejecting it in private, Isaiah used the same slur in front of the media when they inquired about the event. He said, "I didn't call TR a faggot," but he set off another explosion by doing it again. The main LGBTQ+ rights organization, GLAAD, issued a forceful statement. ABC also issued one, stating that his remarks were inappropriate. The reaction was instantaneous. Washington expressed regret. He acknowledged that his words were incorrect, but it was too late. ABC did not formally terminate him until June 2007. Many believed the delay demonstrated that the network did not move quickly enough. Over 6 months after the Golden Globes fiasco, dramatically his character Dr. Burke was written out of the show. Christina Yang was left at the altar by him. That was the last one until 2014. Fans were taken aback when Isaiah made a surprise appearance on the show for a final episode 7 years later. There was a reason why not everyone was pleased. The actress who portrayed Christina Sandraso demanded it. She refused to leave the show without getting the resolution she sought. Isaiah later claimed that she had won that struggle. Despite his previous public service announcements advocating for marital equality, GLAAD even backed his comeback. The show's creator Shonda Rhimes discussed the controversy once more in 2025. The actors who survived that period were still traumatized, she claimed. She acknowledged that people continue to discuss it. In 2007, Katherine Hagel was a global celebrity. Her role as Dr. Izzy Stevens on Grey's Anatomy had recently earned her an Emmy, but after only a year, everything started to go wrong, starting with a single sentence. Hollywood was taken aback when Hagel withdrew her name from consideration for an Emmy in June 2008. She claimed that she didn't believe she received enough strong content that year to be nominated. The remarks were like a kick to the stomach. The show's writers were taken by surprise. The show's creator, Shonda Rhimes, initially said nothing. However, something had altered in the back of mind. Hagel would experience years of repercussions from that one choice. It was not the wisest move, she subsequently acknowledged. In retrospect, she admitted it was more like an ambush. But she told a reporter she was only trying to be honest. Nevertheless, the harm was done. After waiting for the ideal opportunity, Rhimes responded with a low-key yet ruthless line. In response to an inquiry about Heigl, she advised Oprah to believe individuals when they reveal their true selves. The quote was cold, but not loud, and it reverberated throughout the sector. Authors felt deceived. Tension began to rise on the set. Whether they stated it aloud or not, the crew sensed it, and everyone knew. Heigl was nearing the end of his Grey's Anatomy tenure. Then something changed. Heigl adopted a Korean baby girl in September 2009. It changed her life, she said. Overnight, her priorities changed. In addition to being a better actress, she aspired to be a better mother. She left the show for 3 months. Everyone initially understood, but as she continued to miss work and scripts needed to be revised again, tolerance began to wane. She requested a reduction in her hours behind the scenes. Conversations didn't go well. She thus requested to be released from her contract in 2010. The truth was more messy, but she claimed it was for her family, even though she was 18 months early. The producers were just fed up. Things became considerably stranger at the beginning of 2010. Izzy, her character, simply disappeared. She was present one day and then absent the next, simply gone, with no grand farewell or spectacular departure. They had a plan for Izzy, according to one of the writers, but Heigl failed to appear to shoot it. The story from Heigl's perspective was different. They stated she was waiting for the call back in Los Angeles. She didn't get one. It was similar to a breakup in which one person simply walked out after the other ceased communicating. Permanent. When Rhimes finally let her leave the show, Izzy never returned, not even for a farewell. Fans didn't even get a glimmer of closure until 10 years later, when Alex Karev departed the program to spend time with her off-screen. However, it was not the end of the story. Rhimes conducted another interview in 2014. This time discussing her more recent productions. She didn't mince words when asked why things went more smoothly. "This situation doesn't have any Heigls," she said. "I don't tolerate rude individuals or crap." Everyone understood who she was referring to. With that, Heigl's name became a Hollywood cautionary tale. Producers began to steer clear of her. She was referred to being difficult. Offers stopped coming in. She wasn't just a Grey's Anatomy character. She had lost the limelight. Heigl acknowledged in a 2021 interview that the rumors broke her heart. According to her, the criticism got out of hand. From being honest, she became challenging. It takes only a moment to become ungrateful. She eventually needed therapy to cope with it. "I felt like a piece of garbage," she added. However, something unexpected occurred in 2022. The voice of Grey's Anatomy, Ellen Pompeo, raised her voice. She asserted that she was ahead of her time, and that Heigl had been correct all along. Abruptly, the narrative reversed once more. Perhaps Heigl wasn't the bad guy. Perhaps she simply talked too quickly. Perhaps, just possibly, she was correct in a field that wasn't prepared to hear it. However, it was already too late by that point. The departure of Patrick Dempsey from Grey's Anatomy wasn't merely a storyline twist. Behind the scenes, the real-life crisis had been developing for years. Things had gotten out of control by 2015. James D. Perriott, the executive producer, claimed that Dempsey had become a major issue on the set. According to him, Dempsey could halt production at any time and frighten people simply by entering the room. It was even necessary for ABC officials to intervene and meet with him in private. It was that awful. Furthermore, the tension was evident even though there were no sexual accusations. Dempsey and Shonda Rhimes, the show's creator, were hardly able to tolerate one another by season 11. They were at each other's throats, according to Harriet. Some crew members believed Dempsey was simply lonely and miserable behind closed doors, particularly as the influence of the actresses on production increased. The pressure continued to mount as they reported his actions to management. Then the unthinkable occurred in 2015. Derek Shepherd lost his life in an automobile accident. Fans were not just shocked by the moment. It also conveyed a message. Behind the scenes, something had gone horribly wrong. However, it was more than simply work-related drama. It became intimate. According to Harriet, working with Dempsey caused trauma for a few cast members. He claimed that the stress he caused PTSD in certain people. That may sound drastic, but Lynette Rice's book How to Save a Life provided evidence for it from a number of sources. Ellen Pompeo was one name that kept coming up. The relationship between her and Dempsey, who portrayed the show's main couple, had soured off-screen. According to former producer Janine Renshaw, Pompeo became irritated when she had to perform twice as many scenes while Dempsey was always complaining. The fact that Dempsey was accused of being persistently late and delaying production by actor Isaiah Washington, with whom he had a falling out in 2007, didn't help. The suspense peaked when Dempsey's character passed away in Season 11, Episode 21. In addition to bidding McDreamy farewell, the cast and crew exhaled with relief. Then the most dramatic part of all occurred. Insiders claim that Shonda Rhimes issued a directive to the network. Because Dempsey was the ideal man she based the program on, she had always shielded his character. But after she seen his actions firsthand, everything was different. According to producer Renshaw, Rhimes lost it at that point. According to ABC, she said, "I'll go if he doesn't." The decision seemed obvious. Grey's Anatomy had become a worldwide phenomenon because to Rhimes, the network took her side because losing her would have been disastrous. Furthermore, Dempsey's fate was predetermined even though he had a contract through Season 12. His dying scene was captured on camera in complete secrecy in a matter of weeks. Millions were shocked when the show aired in April 2015. Nobody anticipated it. However, it had been building for a while behind the scenes. For his part, Dempsey didn't act surprised. He had worked 15 hours a day, 10 months a year, for 11 seasons on the show. It had just been long enough, he told People magazine in 2016. He acknowledged that having a typical family life was impossible due to the schedule. There were instances when he was unable to respond. When his children asked him what he was doing the following day, he didn't know. He admitted that he probably ought to have quit the show sooner. Harriet, the executive producer, concurred. Dempsey was done, exhausted, and irritated. He was tired of being there every day. His co-stars didn't like that approach, especially since Pompeo was getting a lot more screen time. Ultimately, it was more than one thing. It was all of it. The power struggles, the drama, and the grievances. Additionally, one of the most adored characters on television was killed off in the episode How to Save a Life, which aired on April 2030. Behind the scenes, there was nothing left to salvage. Sandra Oh didn't leave Grey's Anatomy without a fight. She needed to give up a part of herself. In 2011, she began going to treatment. She knew she would eventually have to say goodbye to Christina Yang. Not because something went wrong. She allowed herself a full 2 years, each and every session, journal entry, and private time. All of this was a part of getting ready to leave a role that had influenced her life. Christina was more than simply a character for 10 seasons and 220 episodes. She was a component of Sandra. By the end of Season 9, Sandra just declared, "I'm ready," when she sat down with Shonda Rhimes. In actuality though, that choice had been simmering for a while. The initial 6 cast members' contracts were up for renewal in March 2012. Pompeo, Ellen, Sandra Oh, James Pickens Jr., Chandra Wilson, Patrick Dempsey, and Justin Chambers. ABC wanted each of them to commit for an additional 2 years, and Sandra began to think differently while the others engaged in negotiations. That terrible plane tragedy has just been shown in Season 8. There were 175 episodes in the series. Sandra continued to receive $350,000 for each show, at the top of her game. However, she chose to stay up late creating career maps on paper in order to determine her future steps, rather than pursuing more money. She just told her therapist and a select group of close friends, not the fans or the network. She had decided by December of that year, her final season would be Season 10. She didn't hurry out. The planning process took 14 months. Sandra and Shonda began meeting weekly in July 2013. No catastrophe, no breakdown, no death. Unlike some of the previous goodbyes, this one would not be a clumsy affair. Sandra even contributed to the scene's writing. They collaborated to create a farewell that reflected Christina's goals as the director of a state-of-the-art heart institute in Zurich. To make it seem real, Sandra even researched actual cardiac surgeons. And Christina and Meredith danced it out one last time on May 15, 2014, the day the last episode aired. Then she disappeared. Sandra has completed 216 episodes by that point. Her character had seen too many emotional turns to list: 3 near-death experiences, 24 surgeries, and a failed marriage. She was a Golden Globe winner. She had received 5 Emmy nominations. She was aware that she had nothing more to prove. "I did my best," she said. She also had an odd feeling as she glanced at Christina. She expressed her desire to be released as well. Sandra wasn't the only one bidding farewell. Christina was also involved. However, it wasn't just Christina who departed during that period. Mark Sloan and Eric Dane were engaged in a different conflict. He entered himself into a rehab facility in 2011 while his wife was expecting their second kid. Painkillers for a back ailment were the first step, but it wasn't the last. Once, when he was younger, he had been sober. However, things worsened on Grey's due to the strain, the celebrity, and the downtime during the 2007 writers' strike. "I was screwed up longer than I was sober," he subsequently acknowledged. He cleaned up and went back to work, but something was different. His time was up by 2012. Dane didn't mince words in a 2024 Candid interview. He said, "I was let go, so I didn't leave so much. The person they hired wasn't me." A peaceful decision was made without any major conflict or spectacular conclusion. He would not return. He even said that he felt anxious when others called him McSteamy. He never had the same vibe as the TV hottie. Behind the scenes he was battling pressure, addiction, and identity issues. And the depression worsened after Grey's. Everything fell apart when filming the final ship. Additionally, money didn't assist. The show was costly by season 8. Dane demanded $250,000, but he was only earning about $125,000 every episode. Meanwhile, other celebrities like Kevin McKidd and Chandra Wilson were making less money. There was an option for the network: save money or preserve a popular favorite. Patrick, Sandra, and Ellen were retained. Dane was gone in an instant. Ironically, he received $275,000 each episode on HBO's Euphoria, which was more than Grey's ever paid him. Lexi Grey and Schuyler Lee quit for reasons unrelated to wealth or celebrity. Her mind and body were collapsing. She had recently received a bipolar illness diagnosis at the age of 29. However, the indications have existed since she was 12. She had 3 children. One was experiencing seizures. Another person had autism. She was in full manic mode at work. She wasn't dozing off. She wasn't eating. She turned to acting as an escape route. She kept going by using the adrenaline. However, it was short-lived. She had her husband's backing. Both parties agreed to leave. She had to take care of herself, as well as for her family. She left a scar behind. The season 8 finale of Grey's Anatomy, Flight, featured a plane disaster in May 2012. On board were Mark, Lexi, Arizona, Derek, Meredith, and Christina. The initial plan: Shonda Rhimes recognized that the hospital's plan for Lexi's death from a fall was insufficient. The story was rewritten by her. Lexi would perish beneath the debris. Her hand was held by Mark. He told her that they would never get married, have children, or age. "Made to be," she whispered, smiling. Then she passed away. Mark barely made it through the crash. After 30 days of being kept on life support, he also passed away. In their honor, Seattle Grace Mercy West was renamed Grace Sloan Memorial Hospital. In 2020, years later, they both reappeared in a dream. They briefly made an appearance on the beach while Meredith was in a coma, allowing fans to bid them farewell once again. Nobody anticipated Alex Cariff's departure from Grey's Anatomy. He simply vanished. No notice, no farewell. On November 14, 2019, the 350th episode included his final scene. However, no one realized that was his last moment. Subsequently, each incident had peculiar justifications. They first claimed that he was going to see his ailing mother, then nothing, quiet. However, this was no ordinary character. A hospital had just been taken over by Alex. He was assisting Jo, his wife, who was experiencing severe mental health issues. And even when Christina left, he remained Meredith's closest friend. Fans waited for 7 complete episodes. just questions, no answers. It was terrible behind the scenes. The actor who portrayed Alex, Justin Chambers, was going through a difficult time. Early in 2020, it was revealed that he has been dealing with depression and stress. He was in and out of a mental health facility, according to some. For him, this was nothing new. He was admitted to the hospital in 2008 due to a serious sleep issue that was limiting his weekly sleep to just 1 hour. He claimed that even when his body was worn out, his mind would not stop racing. He would lie down and then stand up and walk, and for 2 months this continued. He attributed it in part to his intense role-playing. He used to say, "Be careful what you find." Later, when asked if he had visited Privé Suisse, a rehab facility well known for treating celebrities, he simply replied, "Maybe," without providing any further details. Then on January 10, 2020, everything was formally announced. After leaving Grey's Anatomy, Justin Chambers made an announcement. The statement was unexpected. No indication, no build-up. "I want to try new things," he stated. Now 50, he had 5 children and a wife. It was the proper time, he added. However, the timing was startling. He was one of the first episode's original 5. He had endured 16 seasons. There was also no grand farewell, in contrast to prior significant exits. Nothing, no last interview, no press. Ellen Pompeo tweeted a few words. The majority of the cast remained silent. Omar Leyva, an actor, described Chambers as humble and honest, and stated that it was time for him to move on. Another original was gone in an instant. From the start, only Meredith Grey remained. The show finally revealed Alex's whereabouts on March 5, 2020. It was unexpected. We discovered that Alex had located his ex-wife, Izzy, through voice-over letters. Her cancer treatment had involved the covert use of frozen embryos. She now had Alex's twins, who were 5 years old. He relocated to Kansas to be with her and the children, leaving everything behind. That required him to leave his work. Meredith and Joe. The fans were incensed. They were deceived. Alex simply disappeared after 16 seasons of development. According to the show's makers, they had 3 options: reunite Alex with Izzy, kill him off screen, or act as though he was still alive. Though not everyone agreed, they selected the one they believed to be the most compassionate. Nevertheless, 6.3 million people watched the show, which was its highest rating in 6 weeks. Sarah Ramirez, who portrayed Kali Torres, likewise abruptly left the role, although in a different way. After 10 years, they departed in 2016, and even Shonda Rhimes was surprised. She claimed to have learned about it just a few days before the general public did. Later, Ramirez said that they had reached an emotional stalemate. They needed time to recover because they had devoted themselves fully to the part. Fortunately, Kali's departure wasn't as shocking as others, because the writers had previously filmed sequences of her departing to New York. Additionally, their daughter could live with both parents because Arizona later moved there as well. They haven't yet, but Ramirez never said he wouldn't return. The departure of Jesse Williams, who portrayed Jackson Avery, was quite different. After 12 seasons, he departed in 2021, although he assisted in writing his own farewell. His next action must frighten him, he told the New York Times. In his last storyline, Jackson moved to Boston to take over his family's foundation because he wanted to step outside of his comfort zone. His goal was to combat racial inequality in the medical field. The plot aligned with Williams's activism in real life. Heartfelt farewells were evident on his final episode, particularly with Meredith. "It was really cathartic to film those scenes," Williams stated. He left and went on Broadway. He was nominated for a Tony Award and starred in Take Me Out. Therefore, the risk was worthwhile. Ellen Pompeo came next. She made the decision to retire after 18 seasons. She played a smaller part in season 19 in 2022. "It was like sending a child to college," she added. "Most individuals keep their children at home for 19 years. She made a joke. She wanted the opportunity to work on new projects and more time for her 3 children. She continued to do voiceovers and served as an executive producer. She acknowledged in 2025 that money was another reason she didn't give up completely. According to her, "If I stop working altogether, everyone will continue to profit from my labor while I will not." She negotiated a $20 million agreement back in 2017. She became the highest-paid TV actress as a result. She kept one hand on the wheel while taking a step back to make more space for the newest figures. Grey's Anatomy came up with a clever solution to deal with COVID in 2020. Meredith contracted the infection from them. She kept seeing dead figures on a beach while she was in a coma. It was sentimental. Fans who had never found closure before were able to do so. Derek, played by Patrick Dempsey, returned. George O'Malley also made an appearance. Mark and Lexi also did. Even DeLuca, who passed away in the middle of the season, jumped into his late mother's arms in a final farewell, despite the fact that their moments were shot on a green screen. Fans were reminded by these sequences of the show's longevity, the amount of loss it has depicted, and its remaining heart.